All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of Change Chat. And this time I am very happy and excited to be joined by my friend David over at Tablet Tech. And I'm going to let David introduce himself here in a little bit. But I've been following David's channel for a while and think we have some similarities in the way we approach tech and the way we talk about things. And we ended up having a conversation on Discord. And I said, you know what, we should actually sit down and talk and talk through kind of, your approach to things and, kind of your journey and all the different components to it. And so we've got some questions, and then of course we'll see where the conversation leads us. But just everybody, welcome. And first, David, like I said, I've been following your channel. You kind of popped up in my feed, and I was like, well, who is this guy? I'm kind of interested in what he's got to say. And can you tell us just a little bit about, your background and what led you down the path before we get to the channel, but just exploring these eNote, e-ink devices and what got you interested in that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, Ed, thanks for having me on Change Chat on your channel today. It's really an honor to be here because you're one of the YouTubers I've been following since I've started my eNote journey or e. You specialize, you put out a lot of videos on Supernote. I was always, and I even did a video on this, I was always resistant to Supernote, but I kept watching your channel. And I kept looking at all the things and all the ways that you use the Supernote devices. And I was like, am I going to cave one day and get a Supernote? I was, resistant to it. And when I finally did, I think I'd watched every video that you had ever done. And when I finally got it unboxed, that I already knew how to use the device, So it was thanks to your channel. And so I really appreciate you having me on today. And then the way the direction that you're going with the channel now, looking at different devices is just really intriguing to me as well. I like to hear your perspective on some of the other devices that you're beginning to look at. It's really cool. So background. So I have a somewhat similar background to you in that we were both in retail. You actually made it out. You escaped. I have not been able to do that. Um, so I started out in retail management at the ripe old age of 22. I was a store manager, had no business leading a store at 22 years old, but somebody saw something in me that I probably didn't even see in myself. So it took a lot of mentorship and a lot of guidance to make me confident in what I was doing. But I've stayed in retail my entire career. Eventually, I did some progression in career and eventually made it up to the corporate uh, store support centers, and that's where I've been probably for the last couple of decades. And you mentioned how did it lead me to my eNote journey. I've always, Ed, that in retail it's very fast paced. There's, a lot of high expectations. Things change very often, and you have to be really organized to be able to keep up with it all, or you're going to fail fast. And I've always had some kind of organizational system, whether it be paper or digital, that has helped me with that. But I've always preferred to handwrite my notes. And I'm a note taker. So if you watch any of the videos on my channel, you'll see that everything that I do is from the perspective of a note taker. I do some additional things like annotate PDFs and stuff, but it's not that often. But so that's what led me to that. I really wanted to be able to capture my notes. I can do them via text, I can type my notes, but it just doesn't stick with me like handwriting my notes does. So that's kind of what led me to eNotes in the first place.
Yeah, and that's interesting because my first supervisory position, I mean, you as a store manager at 22, I can't even imagine the pressure. I was a key holder at 20, and that was enough pressure
Yeah.
for me. And I ended up in grocery retail for most of my career in the retail space. But yeah, we do come from similar backgrounds. I always had, and Rod jokes about the pocket-sized digital notepad. I don't know that I would ever want to go back to that, but I couldn't have lived without the little bound
Yes.
pocket notepad on the floor. and I constantly wrote things down. And of course, that was in an age when cell phones weren't smartphones yet, and
Oh, yeah.
so you didn't have an option. And I can't remember if it was you or Rod who talked about tearing off like cardboard box flaps and taking notes with a Sharpie. I did that a many a time too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when you're doing stuff. So
Oh, I made the transition early to PDAs. I don't know if you remember Palm Pilots and those types of things, but as soon as they came out, it was like, I have to get my life, I have to get my job into this little device. and that took the place of the pocket devices that I was using.
I wish I would have done that. And I think that's, something that, and you kind of mentioned a little bit of our second question, which was, what did your workflow look like before going digital? But you went digital fairly early. I
I
tried the
did.
Palm Pilot back in the day, and I never could get used to the interface. It was just too clunky for me because, like you, I'm a note taker. I like to write. Even when I years later was doing a bunch of work, a bunch of note taking at different campuses and all these other things, I would take a binder and a legal pad and take all these notes and come back and then transcribe them into OneNote because I didn't like the device feel and I didn't like having technology between me and someone else. E-ink devices didn't exist except as readers. And I'm curious because you said you watched all my content. I've got a lot of videos, and you probably saw some really awful ones if you watched all of my
I,
stuff.
no, I don't think I saw any awful ones.
I don't know. I get a lot of grief for like the early Rocketbook videos, and my goal actually is to get. I think you said you have a basement studio. My goal is to get a basement studio because I started downstairs in a room and then moved up here to the library or our study, but it's almost too big and there's no doors and everybody, is really supportive, but they're also like, he's recording again. So
Yeah.
I'd rather kind of have something out of the way. But I'm curious, I'm sure you watched a bunch of other people too. I know I did when I was looking at that first device, but when you were making the decision to get your first device, can you describe the process? So if there were other things besides videos, but and then what device was your first device and why? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so great. And going back to what you were talking about, what was my workflow before digital? I did do, you said you had the pocket notepads. I was really into for me, notes have to look good and I have to feel good about it. So I would get the hardcover journals. I would get the planners, or I get the spiral binders and stuff like that. And I remember that when I would choose a spiral binder, that if it had any less, and I don't know why this was a quirk with me, but if it had any less than 365 pages in it, I wouldn't buy it. It's like I had to have a page per year for some weird reason, and I don't know that I ever filled one up before I went to the next paper version of that. But you know, uh, talking about moving to an eNote device, I this I don't really count because I only count e-ink as the eNote devices that I prefer. But I did spend a very short period of time when Apple released the Apple Pencil for the iPad, and I think that was sometime in 2017. I used that for a very brief time, and then Remarkable started advertising their very first Remarkable device, 2017 or 2018, if I remember correctly. And I switched over to that device pretty quickly. I don't remember that I watched a whole lot of videos. I think I just saw some ads that were popping up on feeds, and I just began to look at that device and then tried it out. Later, as I began, and I advanced through the Remarkable devices. I went Remarkable 2 later, and Remarkable Paper Pro after that. But in the interim, there, I didn't have any idea that companies like Books existed. I just didn't go out and explore that. And then I started getting into YouTube, and you mentioned other channels. I started getting out into YouTube and looking to see what else was available because I knew that there had to be something other than Remarkable. I was pretty happy with it, but I knew that there had to be something else. That's when I discovered you. I discovered Kit Betts Masters, Voya, and some other folks out there that just, really opened up my eyes to a world of ink devices that I wasn't aware of before. and I had a very good experience with Remarkable. Just that pen on paper type feel, and I was like, well, ooh, I got to go try one of these other devices. So that's kind of what got me into it.
And that's interesting because for me, it was lockdown. It was COVID. I was doing operations for a public library, and we won't go through my whole story because I want to know more about yours. But this idea of I found Voya first person I ever saw with one of these, and I remembered trying to dabble in it when I was working through school, and there just wasn't anything that did
Yeah.
what I needed it to do back then. And I didn't know about the Sony DPTs, and I didn't, I wasn't educated about what was out there. So, and then I found Kit. So it's funny how we end up finding the same people
Oh yeah.
as we go through this. And so this leads perfectly into that next question because, when it comes to YouTube, what got you started? Why did you decide to cover and specifically why did you decide to cover you know, e-ink tablets? I mean, what was the reason that you were like, "Hey, this is something that might be fun to do," because we both know it can be torturous at times with editing and with all of the things that come with doing this.
Oh yeah.
But what got you started and why, what what was the reason? What was the spark?
So kind of just I'm real interested in chat groups like Reddit and Facebook. They're dedicated to e-ink devices, and I remember I was reading a thread on there about, and I kept seeing in the Remarkable Reddit and Facebook groups, people were asking about, can I sync my calendar to Remarkable? And of course, you really can't do that. They've got some apps now that'll do some one-way sync, but I had found a way using my iPad to be able to use an app on the iPad that would create a PDF that would sync the calendars from that PDF on your iPad that you could then send it over to the Remarkable. And I thought that was just the coolest thing. And I decided, well, in order to demonstrate this, I need to go out and put this on video and maybe share it on one of those Reddit groups or the Facebook groups or whatever. So I just did that, and it started getting a lot of questions and a lot of comments, and I was like, well, this is pretty cool. And then I made another video along those same lines. The quality of those videos were horrible. I'm still not there on quality yet, but they were really bad back then. I remember that the only way that I could get the device to show up on the screen was I had to turn out all the overhead lights in the room and just let the glow light from the Remarkable Paper Pro shine and the iPad that I was using shine. So you see everything around it is just dark. It's like, the quality was horrible. But yeah, so that was fun. I did it and I was like, hey, this is, let me try a few more videos and see what happens. And I had fun doing it and never expected it to go anywhere. And still don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but it's just fun to do. It's a hobby. It's just something I enjoy doing.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I mean, and just as a clarification, when did you actually start your channel? I mean, start producing videos. We all have the start date, which is kind of when we joined YouTube, but when did you actually release your first video?
December 29th of 2024. So that was that awful, Remarkable Paper Pro calendar video. I did my second video, I think it was maybe mid-January, but I had the channel name. I think I had intentions. I don't remember. I created two channel names probably a couple of years ago and never used them. I did Tablet Tech, and then I did another one called What's It Like? Because my impression or my intention that if I ever started a YouTube channel was that I wasn't going to be a reviewer because I can't get into the technical details like Avoya or some of the other guys that do a really good job of doing that stuff. And I really didn't have the patience to go through a specification list and say it's got this processor and that. I was more of a what's it like? So that's kind of what the intention of my channel was going to be. And when I started this channel here, I was kind of debating as to whether I should use the what's it like channel name or Tablet Tech, and I just went with Tablet Tech on that. But yeah, so it was that first awful video was couple days before New Year's, and then I started doing some additional videos in mid-January.
Cool. So, well, the reason I bring that up is because, you said you don't know if it's really going anywhere. And you and I've kind of had a back and forth off screen a little bit about, you're almost to 1,500 subscribers. I mean, you crossed the 1,000 threshold you're monetized. And the reason I asked on the timing is it took me over a year, well over a year to hit that milestone. So just kudos to you for getting out in front of people and getting, kind of that following earlier, because you're well on your way. I mean, I just hit 3,000, and that's after almost 2 full years of doing this. So, keep doing it. And I mean, and the thing is, you mentioned it being a hobby, and I'm much in that same vein. If it ever felt too much like work, I probably would stop.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy it. I learn new skills. It transfers over to teaching, and it kind of helps me out a little bit.
Yeah, I think that maybe I'm just riding the coattails of people like you and some of the, Kit and Voya. I think that you guys have created the interest in the ink devices, and then new entries like myself and some other folks. I think we just kind of get the benefits of that. So hats off to you guys.
Well, I appreciate that, but I wouldn't, I wouldn't lump myself in with those guys because they're just, I mean, Voya's over 60,000 and I think Kit is over 50,000 now. I geeked out a little bit this morning. I don't know if you followed Brandon Boswell at all, but Brandon released a video for the first time in a long time, and so I can't wait to watch it because he's not only kind of a mentor in some ways, but he and I have talked offline quite a bit, kind of like Kit. I can't ever give enough credit to Kit. Kit took an interest in me early. And, when I was sub 500 users of all things, and brought me on his channel. So,
Oh, great.
to your point, I think that one cool thing about this is the sense of community that
Yeah.
gets built and almost a humbleness of a lot of the people in the space. Jeffrey Moss, who's a very good friend of mine, is one of those people
Jeffrey.
who is just like you take him just like you see him. That's who he is. And I watch every video, even if it's a Dice video or a Transformers video, because the Transformers trading cards he did. Number one, I'm a kid of the 70s and 80s, so I remember all of that. So it was fun. But also because I like to see people do something different, which leads me to a question not on the script, but that came up yesterday. I really enjoyed your video where you kind of, I don't even, DIY'd how screens feel. That one thing about your content, David, that I think, and I've told you before, I'm a big fan of the blooper reel you did. I know you consider that kind of a failure, but those things to me are what make smaller creators like us different,
Yeah.
and you don't see it as much out of the bigger creators. I mean, Voya's been kind of re-embracing that some lately. Kit's always kind of done some quirky things, but the bigger you get, it seems like the less you have fun. And
Yeah.
you seem to have fun. So I'm just curious. So, like, what made you decide to pull out all these markers and Sharpies? And I can't, somebody said you raided the supply closet. I don't remember if that was Aaron over at
I
25
think
Bit
that
Media.
it was Aaron. It was Aaron. Yeah, he said I rated the supply. I wish I had. It would have been cheaper than going to the office supply store and spending. I think I spent 35, $40 or whatever on what I bought. But yeah, so once again, just going back to hearing all the questions about what's it like to write on one of these devices, and you just hear people asking questions all the time, and I was like, well, how do you answer that question? Because you can show them on the screen. There's two things I think that drive people to e-ink devices. That's you know what does it look like? It's easier on the eyes, so you got the visual. But then the thing that you just can't convey on a video is, what does it feel like? So I was like, and I was talking through this with my wife, and I was like, how do I want to help people with that particular aspect of it, but how do I do that? And I remember early on a video when I said that I was biased against Supernote. I remember that the first impression when I took that Heart of Metal 2 pin out of the box, I opened up the Supernote and I started writing on it. I was like, you know what? This feels like if I had a very sharp ballpoint pen, and we do a lot of energy drinks in our house, in those little cardboard boxes, and they're wax covered or whatever. And I was like, I had one sitting in front of me, and I grabbed a ballpoint and I started writing on that thing, or on that energy drink, and I was like, that's sort of what the Supernote feels like. So that I remembered that, and my wife and I were talking about it, and I was like, you know what? If I can duplicate that for the Supernote, what would it be like to write on a books or a remarkable? And then I was like, well, I'm going to need a lot of supplies to be able to figure this out. And I literally figured it out on the video. It's like I had all these supplies laid out in front of me. I brought the device out, and then I wrote on it. I was like, okay, what's it going to take to duplicate that? I turned the video off, and I just started going through all these different things. I even had to go to the kitchen and get a plastic container top off of a Glad storage container to emulate one of the devices as well. So it was really, really fun to do. I felt like an idiot doing it. And I was like, people are gonna see this video and they're gonna unsubscribe and say, no more, we're not watching David at Tablet Tech. This guy's gone off the ledge. But it was fun.
And I would say that, those kinds of videos are just, number one, they're fun, because
Yeah.
to me that's kind of a way to just do something different, and really kind of show a little bit more about you, and kind of the way your thought process works, and the way that you kind of approach things. But also, it's not overproduced. There's that. I'm awful with the edit buttons. I constantly am pulling out breath, and I talked about this on a live stream the other day too, that live streaming is both harder and easier, and video making is both harder and easier. So neither one is
Yeah.
easy, and neither one is, and they're both still hard, but it's live streaming, you're not as worried about talking. Like you and I right now having this conversation is actually probably going to make it easier to edit this video than if it was just me. Because
Yeah.
when you're always focused on yourself, and you say your video quality is not good. I think your video quality is good. And I think that you do a lot of intentional decisions, it seems like, when you're editing. And, we all started, I mean, I had one document camera and a Blue Yeti and a laptop. That's all I had. And so every shot had to be reconfigured. So now I'm lucky enough I have a little bit of equipment, but it's hard. And so when you do something like that though, I don't know if you follow Cam Shand at all.
I do.
Cam Shand is like a master at that. I mean, anybody who can get somebody to watch somebody build a desk, and it's not because, yeah, the technical expertise, which he's brilliant, but also you really like him. And he gets
Yeah.
excited. And you got excited in that video about, look at this, I'm putting these three things together and this is how it works. And I can't say that I disagree with you either. I mean, I think I always liken the Supernote experience to like a pad of paper. But the more I think about it, I'm like, David might be right. It might be more of that waxy feel, especially when it's new, because of the
Yeah.
way the Feel Right 2 sticks a little. So yeah, I mean, I think those types of videos, I think the blooper video with you, your wife, the outtakes with your wife throwing stuff at you, that was hilarious. I mean, as someone who's been
That was
married,
fun.
almost 18 years, that to me, that was just genius. And it was really fun to watch as somebody who's invested in your channel and enjoys your content, to see you laugh and get engaged and joke around. That's always a good thing.
The start of that video was a gamble. So my wife was opposed to it originally because I was, gonna kick off a YouTube video, and she interrupts me with a phone call, and getting on to me about having so many ink devices, and then she said, "If you can't love just one, how can you love just one wife?" And I've been married before, and I told her that. You're not my first wife, that. And then I, led into this whole divorce conversation and stuff like that, or implications. She was a little bit opposed to that originally, but then she gave in and said, okay, let's do it. And I thought that was a gamble. And just some craziness. So didn't know. Once again, it's one of those things that it's either going to make you say this is cool or gosh, unsubscribe. I don't like this guy. So
But I found, and this is what's funny is that there's I joke that 60% of my audience comes back all the time but doesn't subscribe to me, and that's true. If you look at the metrics,
yeah,
over 60% of the people come back and they watch your content multiple times, but they never hit that subscribe button. And so, you know, I don't worry as much about that. I kind of, if somebody finds me, I know that some videos are probably going to tank from a large scale view perspective. But if I don't enjoy it, if I'm chasing the algorithm, it's not as much fun. I mean, I remember
you're
being
right.
very nervous when I strayed away from Supernote content. You mentioned earlier that I've changed direction, and I still Supernote is my go-to device. I use it for everything. It's going to be for the foreseeable future, but the first time I made a books video, it was kind of like everybody was like Jeffrey Moss commented on my channel and said, "Who are you?"
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
He says, "I know." And then after I did my second one, he says, "I don't even know you anymore."
Getting
So,
away from the Supernote.
but I mean, at the heart of it, and this kind of goes back to I think what you mentioned earlier. It was about I kind of like I think your channel's named perfectly, Tablet Tech. I think it's really cool. But I also like that. What'd you say it was? What's it like? Was the other
What's it like?
title?
Mhm.
I actually really like that. I mean, I intentionally didn't name mine for technology because it's really for me not about the tech. I mean,
Yeah,
that's how it ended up in a way because the Supernote was what I used to show the things. But at the heart of my channel, and I think at the heart of your channel, it's about using it.
it
It's not
is.
about the technology itself. It's about what does it actually do, like in a
Yeah,
real world scenario versus the tech specs. And I'll geek out about the tech spec, but I don't want to sit there like you mentioned and go through the whole tech sheet. Very rarely do I do that. Only if it's something like major. But I'm curious because we skipped a question, and I'm not going to let you off the hook for this one because this is going to be a hard one. And you, my friend, have probably the only person I can imagine that has more devices than you. Actually, there are two that I think might be close and might have a little bit more, which would be Kit and Jeffrey Moss. Jeff Moss
oh,
has
okay.
so many in his drawer he talks about that they kind of go there or he gives them away, and Kit does the same thing. But you have so many devices and you use them in unique and innovative ways. But I'm going to ask you what your personal favorite is. So now, if your wife came to you tomorrow and said, "Okay, you down to one," what would it
Oh
be?
boy. So that's a tough question. That's a tough question. I'm going to start off by answering that with how I start my day every day. So I do have 11 different e-ink devices. I've got three iPads. I've got 13, 11, and the iPad mini. So and I'm an iPad first person, I'll tell you that. I have to have iPad for productivity. I use it for Microsoft Teams and Outlook, and the e-ink devices can duplicate some of that, but not all of that. So I'm an iPad first person. But when I go out the door every morning, it is typically, or it could possibly be with a different e-ink device every day. So, and I'm one of those people, and I know it's probably sort of like asking, who's your favorite child? And it's really that difficult. I mean, so there is something that I love about books or Supernote or Remarkable or ViWoods. There's something about each one of those devices that I absolutely love. But to narrow it down, if you were to say I could only have one, and I get to keep my iPad, Do I get to keep my iPad?
You get to keep the iPad. We'll let you keep the iPad because
Okay. If
that's like saying you'd have to get rid of your computer too. So
Yeah, so if I get to keep the iPad, it comes down to two devices, and I would have to choose between those two. And that's the Supernote Manta and the Remarkable Paper Pro. And that's so tough. It's so tough. I love the features of the Supernote Manta, but I love writing on the Remarkable Paper Pro. And I've said in previous videos that the Remarkable Paper Pro is the only device that makes me want to write. So I sit down with it and I'll turn it on. It's not a very complex device. It doesn't do a whole lot. But when I sit down to write on that device, it just makes me want to flow in my writing. I've even said that it makes me want to, makes me want to figure out some more stuff to write. I journal on that device and I love it. So it would be the Remarkable Paper Pro.
wow, I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Now, would
Yeah.
it change? So that, and I'm not shocked because I have followed your channel and I've listened to you, and
Yeah.
I know how much you enjoy that device. I've The first device I ever wrote on for like a hot second was a Remarkable 2, and it's what got me interested. And then I ended up with the Supernote, the original A5, or not the original because that was the A5, but the A5X. I ended up with that. But I've heard you talk about just how much you enjoy writing on the Remarkable Paper Pro. And I tried one at a Best Buy and was underwhelmed, but I think it was because you know how test units are sometimes, not in all retail locations. Some really take time to think about that and make sure that stays refreshed. But sometimes they just leave it up there. And that's what happened in this particular instance. The nib was worn down, the screen was dirty, and it's like, okay, I'm underwhelmed with the way this is writing. But I've heard so many people say how good it is,
Yeah.
regardless of the active pen, which I think may be one of the best implementations of an active
It is.
stylus from what I've heard. I'm not a fan. I think you know that. I'm a big fan of Wacom technology. But
Mhm.
so would that change? So let's say that, or I shouldn't say would it change. So let's say now the choice is you can keep two, one for work and one for personal. Would that change which one you kept for which thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And by the way, going back to the previous question, as you said you were surprised, I was too. So I am so fickle, and when I find a device that I love, I really love it. But I have two, and this kind of goes into your next question. I have two that are my favorite, as I mentioned, Supernote Manta and the Remarkable Paper Pro. If we were to do another change chat tomorrow at the same time, it's likely to be Supernote tomorrow. So it literally does change just based on what I'm going to do. But so your next question, if you had to do work and personal, no doubt which would be which. Supernote is my daily driver. It's the one that's my go-to. I've got so much invested in this, not financially, just from organizational effort that I put into building table of content pages. I've got on my quick access menu, I've got a main table of content page that takes me to, I think if you watched any of my videos and you see that I typically have about 30 different categories of notes or subjects of notes that I keep, you know, that I guess defines my organizational system. And so I've built this table of contents where I've got those 30 categories on there. And then so that table of contents takes me to a sub table of contents that my individual notes are linked to. So it's a great system. I love the implementation that Supernote does with hyperlinks, and that works really well for me. It's aesthetically pleasing, which is important to me, as I said earlier. And then just all the SAR system and the headers and being able to add something to your to-do list or to your calendar is it's unmatched anywhere. But I did say that I journal at home on the Remarkable, so I think that there would be a clear line between what would be my professional device and what would be my personal device.
And it's and one thing here recently, there's been a lot of discussion. You and I are in some of the same discords, and we talk and about this idea of kind of my lens is always from the one device perspective. So, what can I do on this device if I can only pick one? Because I think back to the fact that I could only pick one. I've been
Yeah.
lucky, privileged even, to have these manufacturers send me devices with no strings attached to review them and to talk about them. I had no intention of being a reviewer, and I think I made Kit laugh harder than ever since I've known him when I started doing other devices, because he's like, I didn't start as a reviewer either. I started with physics videos. And so we
Yeah.
had a good chuckle about that. And so, but there's been this talk of a multi device ecosystem. And I think for people who can afford that, that's great, because there's so much potential in all of these different platforms, and they all do certain things extremely well. But I would say that for the things I need, the Supernote checks every box I need. Now, there are some things I wish it did, but they're not needs. And I think that's, kind of, you hit the head on that. Because of the tools and the tool set,
Yeah.
it fits what you need it to do. But yeah, and I do think that the ViWoods is coming up. Yeah, I mean, they're moving, they're innovating, they're doing a lot of different things. And I know you use the Mini quite a bit. I don't know how much you use the AI paper, but the Mini, I have the AI paper, and to me, it comes down to the organizational structure on device. That's the biggest downside. The calendar, I would argue, is the best in the game,
Yeah.
bar none,
Agreed.
right now. So I'm curious, like, if you were to look out 2 years, who do you think? Because right now everybody's innovating at a rapid pace. This is the most competitive I think I've seen it since I started using these devices. BOOX has 4.1. ViWoods is releasing sometimes 2 updates a month in some cases. Right now, the Supernote beta is ridiculously crazy with the reimagined digest, and everybody is just popping out new things. Who do you think is going to? I think Remarkable came out with a new release as well. So, where do you see that going, just from your perspective? Because you have more devices than I do, so you see all of them. I see 3 platforms, basically.
Yeah. So if when I say I'm going to say I'm going to start from the bottom up, I don't mean that as any disparaging comments about a device, but more of a capability. So if you start off with Remarkable, and it's very limited on what it does. It's a note-taking device. It does PDFs and EPUBs, and I think that they have proven that they're not going to innovate a whole lot. They're going to stick with their business model. They're gonna introduce some very, I guess, uh, features that they feel like is going to still keep them that distraction-free device. So I don't think it's going to be Remarkable. I don't think that they're going to lead the way or blaze any trails there. I think WeWoods has a long way to go. I think they're playing catch up. They're trying to get on parity with BOOX and Supernote. So I don't know that they're going to surpass them. I think that they're going to spend a lot of resources on trying to catch up, and they're doing that. I mean, they're releasing some pretty great updates just about monthly. If you look at between the Supernote and the BOOX, that's a tough question. So Supernote is more focused on what they do. So I think that making Supernote a more capable device is going to be easier for them to do, because I think they have a very clear vision of what they want the device to be. And this digest, the beta that they've done on the digest is just incredible. It's been very useful for me. When you look at BOOX, so they're an Android tablet, so they're not only focused on one aspect of their device, note taking. They have a lot of different aspects that they have to bring up and improve all at one time. So I think we're probably going to continue to see those two devices or those two manufacturers lead the innovation. But I'm more inclined to think that we're going to see, at least from my perspective as a note taker, I think we're going to see more uh, innovation or more useful and more well implemented features from Supernote. Just my opinion. I could be totally wrong.
It's interesting because the reason I ask you this question is because, sometimes we find ourselves in a specific camp. And everybody knows that my current camp is the Supernote, but at the same time, I've been really impressed with the 4.1 software on the books
Yeah.
because of the fact it now has contextual lasso, which has been a Supernote feature since they launched for a long, long time. It now has a customizable Neo reader toolbar in the lasso. So if you select something, you can customize and you don't have 5 million options at the side of selection. Some of those, they seem like such small things, but they're so intentional for customizing your experience. And I think that really Books has done an amazing job of not closing the gap, but at least making the Neo reader more accessible because it's the most powerful reader. I mean, I love the Supernote reader, but it's not near as capable to do as many things as Book. However, you throw the digest in there. And I was playing with the digest. I was up way too late last night playing with the digest a little bit. But now that you can add manual entries, you can add from notes, you can add from EPUBs, PDFs, documents, anywhere you want to on that device, except for third-party apps. And I think they're talking about that. If you can add
I wish
all
they
of
would.
that into one kind of central hub, that's an amazing thing. And add typed and handwritten text to all of that. From, like you said, I escaped retail. I I I hit a turning point and with my family decided that I wanted to do something different, and I became a designer, an instructional designer. I'd always done training and development in retail. After I hit a certain point, I was in training and development, and I really enjoyed that, and I took it in a different direction. But now that I've, gone back to school and done some research, and for even just someone researching a topic, maybe they've been recently diagnosed with a medical condition, or maybe they are trying to research their family tree, whatever your bent is, this new digest allows you so many ways to add information around kind of a central theme or a central
Mhm.
hub that then links out to all these different resources. I can't wait for it to drop. And I emailed Supernote and I said, when are you dropping the production on this? Because I've done a quick video, but I want to do an in-depth video on the functionality as released. Because to me, it's a game-changing way of thinking and organizing your thoughts. And it almost makes again, it revolves in some ways around note taking, but it also kind of unifies their reader experience in a way that I don't think books can.
Yeah.
You can do book notes, but it's just not quite the same. So I'd be curious. You said you've been playing with the digest. What are your early thoughts on it?
Once again, I'm a note taker at heart. So when I use Digest, it's to get information into my notes, right? I don't usually, I think that you have the ability now to create a digest from your notes, right? I don't use that function. I'm funneling stuff into notes. And the difference between the Supernote, the functionality of being able to get stuff in like via text box, and something like Books, is that Supernote is more elegant and a little, I guess, polished in what they do. So when I go out and I copy something, for example, I take notes in, like in church on Sundays, and
Mhm.
I take notes. And when scripture is referenced, I'll go into either a PDF version of the Bible, or I'll go into. I've got a third-party app that I can also do, that's more copy and paste. But if I do the PDF version, I do a digest and I bring it into my notes, it's intelligent enough to know the width of that template, the screen. It doesn't throw that text box off the side of the screen. Books does that. It'll have it way off to the side, and I've got to bring it over and center it and then resize it and all that stuff, which is just a little extra friction that makes that less desirable to use. Where Supernote is just, I mean, they've nailed that, and I know that may be a minor thing, but And then you can keep all your digest, organize your digest by category. It's just a better implementation than anything that's available on the books right now. So that's just the way that I use it. I know that I'm probably more limited in what I do than what you do. Like I said, PDFs, I don't do a whole lot with PDFs other than just reference them sometimes. I know that you do a lot of annotations on, doing grades and stuff like that. I don't spend a whole lot of time in Neo Reader on the books. I don't spend any time, using PDFs or anything on the Supernote device either, unless it's a creation of my own where I've created a single subject notebook and a whole video on that. But that's the only way that I use PDFs generally. So I'm very centered around notes.
Yeah, and one thing that you brought up there, you said that Supernote was very intentional, and I think Books has kind of learned that lesson a little bit, and I think that's why there's more competition with the way, and Rod brought this up. A bunch of people have been asking Books forever for the contextual lasso menu,
Yeah,
and they've implemented it, and they've implemented it well. And so, kind of with the Supernote had a digest for a long time, but they didn't have text entry. You couldn't insert text, you couldn't do other things. But it seems like every time that they release something, it was worth the wait, if that makes sense. It's like, okay, we're going to release this, but oh, by the way, all of this basic feature you wanted, or, we're going to like do that in a totally reimagined way. It's kind of like stickers being stroke collections instead of images. That's something no one else is doing. Yeah, you can enter shapes, you can do different things, but they're predetermined. This way, any collection of strokes or straight lines becomes a sticker. So
yeah.
it's, and some people love it, some people hate it, but it's intentional. And it's like, we're not going to do it the way everybody else is doing this. So,
It's very Apple-like. I know you're not an Apple fan, and I think I let you know last night. I'm switching from iPhone to an Android device later today, as a matter of fact. But it's very Apple-like. So Apple is not they're not the first one to come out with features, but when they do come out with a feature, it's done right. It's well thought out. It's highly polished. It's implemented in a way that's very easy to use and just very intuitive. And I kind of see that with actually with what you just said about Supernote. It's kind of the same thing. It's like when they do release a function or a feature of the device, it's just so well done, like they've done with the digest now. So
it's interesting because actually my first smartphone was an Apple, and I had Apple. We had Apple for years, and even now, I think I told you with part of upgrading some different things. I got the first iPad I've had in over a decade, and I did a little bit of an unboxing, and then I'm probably going to give it to Melissa, or I am going to give it to Melissa and the kids to watch and consume content on. But I'm amazed at A, how familiar it is because it's still an iPad, and but B, also how far it's come with like iOS 26. And it's just amazing how fast this little device, and it's just the A16 chip, and I think I mentioned that to you too, but it's just so fast and it's so pretty and it's elegant. And I would agree with you that Apple, it's not so much that I dislike them. I'm a Windows user because that's what I grew up on using. And when I've tried Mac, it just feels so different. It's hard for me to wrap my head around. But iOS is excellent. I just prefer the Android phones. I'm a big Samsung user. Once I went from Apple, I went straight to Samsung, and I've never looked back. And I just really enjoy their phones, their hardware, the integration with PCs, with Windows PCs specifically. That with Phone Link is awesome. So,
it
well,
is.
David, I realize I've kept you for quite a while, but this has been a really great conversation, and I've really enjoyed getting to know more about you, getting to know a little bit more of kind of the behind the scenes and, kind of what your journey has been, you know, could you tell, my audience, people who are watching this or listening to this, because the cool thing about, thanks to Aaron helping me figure out how to turn this into a proper, what I would call a proper podcast, which is it goes out in both audio and video. But if you can kind of, you know, tell us where we can find you, what services you're on, anything else you'd like us to know, how we can better support your channel. I'd really be interested to hear that as we round out.
That is really easy to answer because you can only find me one place, and that's YouTube. So I've got, the David at Tablet Tech YouTube channel. And, I'm just putting all my content out there. And, I've looked at other, Instagram or TikTok, and I really haven't explored or had much interest in expanding to those things. I don't know if you're on those platforms or not. But I'm just kind of focused on one because this is, just a part-time or a hobby for me. And, I have to find time to do it after work or on weekends and stuff like that. So really just focused on YouTube for now. And, I think support, you mentioned that. I really appreciate you bringing that up. I think, Ed, you have been very supportive, and, this change chat today is, very much appreciated on my part. To have somebody like that I've looked up to for all this time to invite me on your channel is just a great honor for me, and I really appreciate that.
Well, the respect goes both ways, and I'm always happy to do it. You do have a store, though. I want to make sure that so you do have some merchandise out there. As a matter of fact, what was it? Running on e-ink and caffeine, or what does your
Yeah.
coffee mug say? It's one of favorites.
So
I love the
yeah,
saying.
I've got one that says this. I think it's on the coffee cup. I've got this cup refreshes slower, just like my ink device.
Yep.
And then I've got another one that says running on ink and caffeine. So it's and I've got that in a mug and a t-shirt. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I didn't even think about plugging that. I know you just
Yeah,
launched some merchandise as well. I see you're wearing the shirt there. That's really cool.
I did. Melissa actually designed the little chameleon because since it's, about change and, my background is in organizational change. So she was like, oh, well, you should have a chameleon. And then,
But I have to know one thing. So I think I've seen in your username change 1820, and I got to know what is the 1820?
yeah. So I didn't even think about that I intentionally named it that, but I
Yeah.
didn't think that it would cause kind of some of the controversy it has because it's also the year of the Missouri Compromise. And that is not in any way
Oh, yeah.
where that name comes from. I'm a two-time IU Hoosier grad, and Indiana
Yeah.
University was founded in 1820. And so
Gotcha.
for me, I picked that name and that combination, and this actually came up in a comment on one of my videos the other day, and I had to respond kind of at length and say, listen, this has nothing to do with what was going on historically in the US as a whole. This is very much personal to me, and the
Yeah.
fact that I'm very proud of, the school I went to and the fact that it's over 200 years old. And, that's kind of where that comes from. And then of course, agent is the fact just a change agent. So you kind of play on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
words of that. But yeah, I appreciate that. And the reason I bring up the support thing, and then I really will let you go. But the reason I bring that up is that there's been talk about affiliate links and talk about Reddit's been on fire with that, and there was a recent exchange about how affiliates are out there just promoting, and it's basically a sponsorship. And I want to be really clear that that is not what an affiliate link is. And,
Yes.
I know that you use affiliate links. I use affiliate links. People who choose not to, there's absolutely no reason. That's a personal choice. And I think it's perfectly valid. But at the same time, what we do costs money. It takes time. And affiliate links are a good way for us to allow people, if they enjoy the content they hear or take the advice that we may give about a specific use case. I've had people buy devices through my affiliate links that I wouldn't recommend maybe to them if I knew more about their case, but they chose that that was the device they wanted, and we get some support from that. So, it's very important, and I would encourage everybody, as you're watching David's content, as you're watching any creator's content, but specifically David's, to think through what value are you getting from that, and if you do get value from that, supporting by just clicking through that link and making the purchase you were going to make anyway, because it really does help. And so that's why I wanted to kind of tease that out, because yeah, you can buy merchandise, which I just started doing, and I know that a lot of creators do, but that's extra outlay, and I understand that, and you may not be interested in that. But if we can provide a way for you to support us without swaying, or without, kind of strong arming or really doing sponsored content. And there's nothing wrong with sponsored content either. I don't personally do it, especially in the e-ink space, but that's because I believe that would create a conflict.
Yeah.
But I would do sponsorships on other things. So if somebody said, we want to sponsor your material, Scott Kramer, my kids love him, and he does a lot of really fun content, but his sponsor is Helix Mattress Company. And so Helix Mattresses has nothing to do at all with the content he makes. He does a lot of pop culture, a lot of social media and entertainment news and fun stuff. And it's really cool because he's got a sponsorship who believes that the information he's putting out there is valuable, and there's no conflict there. And I'd be interested, as a final closing thought from you, David, on that. Why did you choose to go the affiliate link route? Is it, do you see it as an inherent conflict?
Yeah, I don't see any conflict at all in doing affiliate links. It's, people ask frequently when you do a video on a device or whatever the case may be, where is it available? Especially when you do stuff on accessories for devices. I've done a couple of videos for the Tab XC on a specific screen protector, and I did not put a link in there to that screen protector. And as a matter of fact, when I did that video, I wasn't even an Amazon affiliate at the point. And then I just had so many people reaching out and saying, where can I get this? What's the link to it? And I put a link out there that was not an affiliate link. And I was like, well, why not do an affiliate link? It's not any kind of a compromise that I see at all. No extra cost to anybody that clicks on the link, and you get a small commission off of it. And you're right, we do put a lot of money into the channel. I mentioned that. What's it like to write on an ink device video? That was, I think, what it is, 35, $40 or whatever that I put into that. But that's still, it's money that you outlay on that, right? And it's good to get some kind of a return on that. And you mentioned other ways of support. I've just gotten big enough. First of all, my channel's not big enough that any manufacturers are interested in reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, would you do a sponsored video?" or, or "Hey, can I send you this video, or can I send you this device and let you review it?" That they're not interested in me at this point. So I don't have that challenge to work with. But there's other ways. When I got my first, and I think it's called a super thanks, on YouTube, I got my first one of those, and it's been several months ago now, but I was kind of overwhelmed by that. I was like, really? Somebody found that much value in it? And because I think I undervalue myself, and I've always done this my whole life. It's like, that, I probably don't even want to go into this, but it's like, I think that what other people do is better than what I do in most cases. So I'm like, for somebody to have reached out and done a super thanks, it was like, that made me back up and really think about things and say, wow, that was incredible. And it's happened several more times since then, and it still is just kind of overwhelming. And I'm not trolling for super thanks. Don't get me wrong, but it's but anybody that's watching this video on Edge channel, certainly he deserves a super thanks for this, because he's put a lot of effort into reaching out to other creators like myself. And Ed, it very much appreciated what you do for the e-ink community. Hopefully that answered your question, and probably more than you wanted to know beyond that.
No, it just, I think it brings us full circle. And I think that, like I told you before, you and I seem to have a lot in common. And I've always believed that I'm always trying harder because of that fact that I think that I'm not doing it as well as I should be. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate you taking the time. I mean, we both have full-time jobs, and you have things that you're doing, and plus trying to push out these videos and do all of these different things. And I just thank you for making time today. And for everybody who's watching, please support David. He is doing really good work over there. We only gave you a fraction of the videos he's put out, and we only talked about a small percentage of those. But he did mention accessories. He does a lot of that. So if you're looking to kind of enhance a device you have, I don't do as many accessories. So head on over to his channel, check that out. He can give you some really good advice. But David, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you making the time to be here today.
Thank you, Ed. It's been an honor to be on your channel today. I really appreciate you taking the time to have me here today.
Bye, everybody. We will see you later.
Bye.